You wanted the best, and you got me instead. That's right, it's me, Jake. I'm back again with another episode of Kiss My Podcast. Today we're talking all about Dynasty, not the television series, but the album by Kiss from 1979. If you're a fan of Samuel Warren Stone, well, guess what? Ladies and germs, he's back. He's here again.
Yeah, this is my third time on Kiss My Podcast.
Oh, shit.
Second time in a row, actually.
Oh. It's a party now.
Yeah.
But we're talking all about this kind of weird one. My relationship with this album is interesting, and listening to it again, I actually came off liking it a little bit more than I had in the past. But we'll dive all deep into that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily like a bad album per se. It's like decently put together. It's just like
my thing is it's a bad Kiss album.
Yeah, no, I could totally get that because like I think on both of the previous two times I was like, what really the big appeal for Kiss isn't necessarily their technical expertise, it's just how like fucking dirty rock and fun they are, and they take the grit away from this. It's really
luckily
it's
Ace
too
Frehley's
polished.
still in the band because he keeps that in there. But
how much does he actually? I mean, I guess we'll get to it, but how much does he actually do on the album?
He ties for lead vocals with Paul with 3.
And
on this one. So he wrote 2 songs and he does a cover.
And he doesn't do all the guitar work.
No, he does. I mean, there's a couple of tracks where he does all the guitar work.
Well, I always thought that this was like the beginning of certainly like Peter doesn't do.
This is the beginning of the end for Peter, not Ace.
Right.
Ace is still
music from the Elder hasn't come out.
Yeah, Ace is still in it. He's still got 18 months left with the band, basically. But yeah, so Ace for me is the big hero of this one. But let's go into the nitty gritty of all the fun behind the scenes stuff here. Released May 23rd, 1979. What a year. Recorded January to February 1979 at Electric Lady Studios and Record Plant Studios in New York, and produced by Vinny Poncia. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I am so sorry. The singles here, I Was Made for Loving You. We'll definitely talk about that one. That's a big time. May 20th, 1979, so you get that 3 days before the album's released. All the Kiss fans are probably pretty bummed out because most of the Kiss fans were bummed out when that song came out. And then Sure Knows Something, September 30th, 1979, the second lead single off the track. 2 solid singles in my opinion, but we'll dive more into it deeper when we get to them actually in the track list. So to give a little background here of because the last episode we were talking about the 4 solo albums, Kiss has been really busy since Love Gun. Obviously they do the 4 solo albums, but they also do a Live 2. And Alive 2 was interesting because when they realized they were putting the set list together, they couldn't record their set list had to be basically a whole new set list because they can't play Strutter and Deuce and Cold Gin because they've already been on the first Alive. So here they are putting out songs, from Dynasty, from Love Gun, and from Rock and Roll Over, which are, obviously I think, their strongest 3 albums in a row. Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun. And but at the same time it's kind of expected from Kiss, and it's fine. Like, it's cool rock and roll. The album cover's a little weird. It looks like so actually, speaking of album covers, this album cover, it looks like it's pieced together with different pictures, and the Dynasty cover is actually pieced together from different pictures. It looks like one group shot, but it's actually not a group shot. But again, that's just the beginning of Kiss falling apart behind the scenes, but looking totally normal on the surface, which is very much, I think, perfect for Dynasty with the album cover and what's going on behind the scenes. Again, we kind of talked about this with Peter Criss. He actually injured his hands in a car crash, so he's not playing drums on this one a lot. We're also going to talk about, there's a track on here that's the last time we're going to hear from him in almost 20 years, which is weird because the next album he's credited as the drummer. But Anton Fig, uncredited hero, who we know from Ace Frehley's solo album, comes back in a big bad way and really picks up the slack and plays drums on this entire album, basically, except for one track, and it definitely shows. What else we got here? I do like the fashion, the costumes for this one. When I was a kid, I loved Dynasty solely because they're like superhero-esque costumes, very color coordinated.
Very shiny.
Yeah, very shiny, very shiny. But again, like we said, this is really the beginning of the end of the classic lineup. I mean, it really is the end of the classic lineup in terms of, Peter's last hurrah is on this one. 2 interesting side notes. The Japanese subtitle for this was Escape from Hell, which makes no sense because there's nothing metal about this album at all. But I guess, hey, let's do it. And then
you ever seen the Japanese album cover to this?
What's the Japanese album cover?
It's a composite, so it's all four of them separate, like playing live. But Paul Stanley's is the best because he's got like a beret and he's just like,
oh, nice.
Yeah. I did a weird like pose, but just know that
it's Paul Stanley pose.
Google it.
But then what they wanted to have for a promotional poster was they wanted to have them all in straitjackets, and the studio or the label Casablanca was like, that's too much for the kids. And I was like, well, so is spitting blood and songs about dicks, but I guess the straitjacket was where they're going to draw the line.
Plaster. Did they do Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park at this point? They had to have.
They've already done that by that point, and that was, again, it's just a disaster. I know Chris and I had joked about the idea of maybe doing like a commentary or like a reaction podcast for it, maybe down the line, but the farthest I could stay away from that, the better. But yeah, that has happened and failed miserably already. So, speaking of not failing miserably, let's talk about the first track of the album here.
The most, I think, iconic track off this album.
Definitely. I Was Made for Loving You. Again, we're going to have a lot of outside help on this one, and Kiss is going to have a lot of outside help on this one. Something they really admitted to later in interviews was they were really taking direction on how and where the band should go from other people, which is the worst thing you could do. It's something I think early day Kiss would have kicked their ass for. But it shows because you get a lot of outside help. Some of it's really good, though. We actually get introduced to a guy later on who's going to be a big part of Kiss outside of the band. We'll get to him, and we'll talk about him later. But anyway, written by Paul and Vinny Poncia, the producer, and Desmond Childs, the guy who I was just mentioning, who really becomes basically one of the biggest songwriters in Kiss for the Unmasked era, is in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And this really kind of starts his career, this song especially, with Kiss and kind of just his songwriting career in general. And it's kind of a hell of a way to start it off. But yeah, we're going to be talking about him a lot when we get into the Unmasked era stuff. But again, of course, sung by Paul. And of course, Paul writes this as really the cash-in for the disco era, or the quote-unquote Kisco era.
This is the song that most people kind of point to when the term of like Kisco comes up.
Yeah. It actually, it debuted at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, so really high tracking single for the band because disco was huge. Paul, say what you will about selling out or whatnot, but Paul knew what was working, and Paul is a really great, pop songwriter. Now, granted, at the time, like we alluded to earlier, I think most diehard Kiss fans in '79 were really pissed off. This is not the direction they wanted to hear their band go.
Yeah, I mean, because you figure this Dynasty is supposed to be the big return of Kiss.
Yeah.
They hadn't put out a studio album in like 2 years.
Yeah. And, before with those three that, we talked about earlier, they were putting it back to back to back. They were becoming the biggest band in the world. And, yeah, here's this return, and it's anything but a return to form, really. I mean, you get some great moments here and there, but this being the first track and people are going, what the fuck?
I mean, commercially, this album and this single, as you alluded, does pretty well, but I think the tours kind of suffered commercially because of it.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing is, it's, come full circle 360 here that, when I saw Kiss live, when they started playing the song, the most manly, muscular, biker-looking Kiss fan was freaking out because he was so excited to hear the song, And I'm not alluding that to me, obviously. I'm alluding to the guy, like, this guy's next to me all around me. Everyone was going crazy for this song. Everyone loves the song and everyone wants to hear it. And of course, we're getting into Kiss, almost 20 years after the fact this album comes out. I was really getting into it in the mid-'90s, and I just accepted this as a great Kiss song. I wasn't obviously there for what it was like to hear and see and feel what it was like to be around when Beth dropped, and then when I Was Made for Loving You dropped. So the song's kind of come full circle. I think it's a great song. For years, I could never trust Kiss once I found out that, all the backstage behind the scenes studio stuff. For years, I was just assumed it wasn't Ace on this track, but it totally is. It just doesn't sound like Ace, but it's a really great little quick electric lead. It's almost like a little lick, just really quick, but I like it a lot. And my college roommate was obsessed with the song and the music video. He used to mime Gene Simmons, which is really weird. Like if you've ever seen the music video, it's very weird looking Gene Simmons. Thing to impersonate, but again, a Kiss classic through and through, and I think a great Kiss song. And again, Jesus, man, Kiss knows how to fucking write an opener, dude, and it's usually Paul Stanley who does it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great track. I mean, it gets a bum rap, but it really is like a solid.
Would you say this is one of your favorite Kiss songs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, yeah, totally.
And dude, talk about Paul Stanley's range on this, dude.
Yeah.
Like he goes high, and he still does it live. Like when I saw him a couple years ago, I mean, he still can rock it. And I think it's just a great groove, dude. It really is.
No, it's a good, four on the floor dance number. It's great.
And the cool thing is, Paul Stanley plays bass on this one.
Oh,
well.
It's not Gene.
It's not Gene. Now Gene obviously plays, in live and stuff, but when it came down to recording it all, Paul Stanley comes in with the bass and rocks it. So pretty cool, man. But again, a great number, and rightfully so with the Kiss Army. I'm glad that people have come around to accept. I'm sure there's still the holdouts who are like, fuck Beth and fuck I Was Made for Loving You. But you're just missing out two great songs, buddy. So for the one guy out there, sorry.
In his basement, just like, oh, they're talking Dynasty, but I have to listen anyway because I'm that hardcore of a Kiss fan. Oh.
Thanks for the download, buddy. Anyway, next track. Excuse me. 2000 Man.
2000 Man.
I'm a 2000 man. Written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards.
That's right, because it's off the Rolling Stones album, His Satanic Majesty's Request, which is like the worst 60s Stones album. One of the worst Stones albums in general.
Here's one of the things I can say about this song and not feel like an asshole about, because I love the Stones and I love Kiss. This is an example of Kiss doing something better than the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Because I don't know if you've ever heard the Rolling Stones version, but it's lame.
I don't know if you've actually heard that album, but it's lame.
Yeah, and so Ace has always kind of been, and this album proves it, if the other ones haven't, but of course they do too. But this album definitely proves it, that Ace is a guy all about kind of the hard, dirty rock and roll. He's very much the Rolling Stones influence. If Peter is like the jazzy influence and Paul and Gene are the Beatle influence, Ace is 100% the Rolling Stones influence.
Yeah, it's like Stones and Doors, really.
You can hear some of that too. But this is an example of what I was saying earlier. Ace plays all the guitars on this track and the bass on this track. So he basically takes his entire song over.
He Billy Corgans it.
Yeah, right. But again, I'm glad to see Ace is still doing lead work. He doesn't shy away from it after Love Gun and Shock Me. And of course, his solo album probably only helped boost his confidence even more, because we're going to hear 2 more times Ace singing lead on this album, which is really great. But it really is one of my favorite tracks on Dynasty, because it's just a fun track. And Ace, I think, again,
it's the closest it gets to like the Ace tracks on this obviously this one included, are the closest it gets to like classic dirty Kiss.
Yeah. There's a track later on that I think would fit on any of the early stuff. You can't say that about most of the tracks on here, but there's a later Ace track.
There's just something, again, in the production quality. You hear a lot of the songs on this album, it's just like, that's a little, like, Kiss is there.
Mm-hmm.
There's the recognizable guitar riffs. There's Paul Stanley with the, as you call them, like kind of like sassy vocals, but it's too clean. But this is one of those songs that isn't.
Yeah, it's clean and it's thin, and that's the clean and thin reminds me of Dress to Kill, but it's not as good as Dress to Kill. You know what I mean? So it's a complicated relationship with this album, because I went in, making my notes and listening to the album start to finish this morning and thinking like, oh man, there's only like 3 tracks I like on this. And I came away actually liking a lot more than I remember, but it's still a definite step in the wrong direction for the old Kisseroo. The next track though is not. Next track though is a fucking great example of some Kiss stuff. Kisco especially, Sure Knows Something. Written by Paul and Vinnie Poncia and sung by Paul. In terms of the 2 big Kisco numbers, I always kind of gravitated this one a little bit more. And it's nothing to say that I think that I Was Made for Loving You is a weaker or not a superior track. I just think that it's got this kind of real bite to it. It's like that Kiss thing you're talking about is there high, like it's fighting to get through in this song a little bit more.
But there is still like dance elements to
there's definitely dance elements. I mean, that bass in the beginning, which is played by Gene on this, is that intro is like super sexy, sassy Kiss time. And I don't know. I think this is just, I think it's one of their big kind of like great four-ways in the Kiss, the Kisco era. They never really went past it with these 2 tracks, probably because they heard of the fan backlash. But Paul Stanley could have been like just a disco songwriter, just sitting behind the scenes and like writing songs for people. Because he has his finger like on the pulse, especially back in the late 70s and the 80s, on like what people want to hear. Not necessarily maybe what the Kiss fans want to hear, but what people want to hear. And you do get a classic Paul going, yeah, at the end. But again, great solo, and just a great Kiss track overall. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that I like this song just a little bit more than I Was Made for Loving You. I think it's because of that big kind of chorus, and kind of the ridiculous
It's more
lyrics.
of a classic Kiss song than I Was Made for Loving You.
Yeah, I Was Made for Loving You is a bit more of a stretch, I think. I think most people would agree.
Yeah.
But it's time to get a little sad here, guys, because we're going to say goodbye to a classic Kiss member who's been with us since the beginning. And the track's called Dirty Lovin'. And it's written by Peter. Stan Penridge, who we've talked about before, and Vinny Poncia is back writing this. Their producer is all in it on this album with the writing credits. Sung by Peter. Here it is, folks. Last stop for Peter Criss until we get to Psycho Circus, which is a long time away. It feels like it's going to be 20 years away from this point.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like this track very much. It's kind of just a generic kind of jam. I don't think it's a horrible song. It's got some catchy moments. And you actually get some range from Peter Criss on this one. Like, his vocals are a little bit more diverse, I guess. But I would have liked to see his last track be Hooligan, I would have liked that to be like the walking into the the shadows, the sad Hulk music as Hooligan's playing.
Off into the sunset.
Yeah, but this is it, guys. I mean, this is the last time we're going to hear him drum. And even when he's on Psycho Circus, I think he's only playing on like one or two tracks. So his tenure in Kiss is pretty much done here, and it's the car crash doesn't help, the drug use doesn't help either, and it's kind of a bummer because we rag on Peter Criss here and there, but at this point in his life, his career is going to kind of really spiral out of control and go into some really rough stuff now. I think he's better now, having it all kind of behind him and trying to move forward. A cancer survivor as well, but. Yeah, it's just this is kind of the beginning of a really rough time for Peter Criss, and it's kind of a bummer. Kiss. When I was a kid, I had no idea about any of this stuff going on.
Oh yeah,
I just figured if Peter Criss was on the cover, he played on all the tracks. If Ace Frehley was on the cover, he played on all the tracks. And it wasn't until years into being a Kiss fan that I really learned kind of the dirty truth that. The next album, we'll talk about next week as well, like that he doesn't play on it at all. He doesn't do anything on it.
Yeah.
Anton Fig is he's the uncredited, and they put Peter Criss because they wanted to keep this illusion together, and so again, kind of a uninspired end to Peter Criss's tenure, but any closing words? Because you'll be the guest of the closing words on Peter Criss in Kiss.
I suppose, though. I guess Mick will talk a bit about it next week or next time with Unmasked. But, I mean, he was the right drummer for Kiss at the start of Kiss.
Yeah,
they're not at the start anymore.
No,
and he's not who he was at the start of Kiss either.
Definitely not.
So, I think they made the right decision. It's always sucks the way it goes down, but for the long-term health of the band, they needed to switch up.
And it's the effects are going to show on Ace because Ace was the partier as well, and to see his buddy go, that's only he's a ticking time bomb as well. But the drummer will get as the replacement once it's all official said and done is the best drummer Kiss ever had, and if not the best drummer, the most beloved drummer and one of the most beloved members of Kiss. So it brings in a great new era with him when he comes in, and we'll keep that down the line. But if you know Kiss, you know what we're talking about. So that's Dirty Lovin', guys. It's just a fine track, but this is an example of what Sam was talking about, kind of the thin, uninspired Kiss. This is a track that kind of checks all all those boxes off wonderfully. So next track is another one that's not so great, Charisma. Hey guys, you remember Gene Simmons? He's still in Kiss, and he's.
I like the bass line that opens it.
Yeah. Gene on this one, sung by Gene. But Anton, knowing that he's the drummer, it's kind of nice that we know now he's the drummer on this album because he gets a little kind of like solo drum intro, like Sam was talking about. It just again seems kind of like an uninspired track from Gene and the demon persona, but. A lot of this album, I think, for me, also kind of hinges on, is the track catchy? You know, that's kind of where it's gone, and it is a catchy track.
It starts out catchier than it becomes.
Yeah.
Ironically, once the chorus kicks in, it's like, fuck.
Yeah. I mean, Gene, to his credit, writes one of my favorite tracks on the album later on, and you do get the yeah in it, and you get that weird thing at the end where he like talks and sings at the same time. They dub him over. He's got that really good voice. He's like, hey, the charisma. That's more Stallone. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like he you know, I don't know. I feel like Gene's mind isn't on Kiss really at this point.
At this point, I think he's starting to. I mean, it really comes into play during the '80s, but he's starting, to turn more towards like acting and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Kiss very well could have just ended, and
in the '70s.
Yeah, very. I mean, this could have been their last album.
This could have been like they could have been like the New York Dolls guys.
Yeah, I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously, I think I know what your answer is because I think it's the obvious answer. Do you think if Kiss called it quits, like say Love Gun happened, right? Well, it did happen, but say Love Gun happens. It's the last of all 4 original members are playing on all the tracks, and they have a huge blow up behind the scenes, and that's it. Do you think if that's the end of Kiss, they're looked at much better in rock and roll?
It's tough because within rock and roll maybe because they have that kind of like Beatles-esque, like they were only around for
they didn't take the makeup off, they didn't put the makeup back on, they didn't have all the different band members, they were doing the product stuff from day one.
Yeah, but I mean it was really the commercialization of the 80s and the 90s that we really would Kiss be the band it was today? Probably not.
Yeah.
We wouldn't see them team up with Scooby-Doo or whatever. We wouldn't see any of the stuff that they're doing now.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't, as commercially speaking, they wouldn't be the music industry juggernaut that they are.
Yeah.
But in terms
of rock and roll Hall, you think they'd be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I think they would run a better chance.
Yeah. Because I mean they are, which is nice, but it'd be interesting.
It took them literal decades.
Yeah, because it's 25 years after your first release.
Yeah, so it could have been like as late as the 90s.
Yeah,
but
they were so Rolling Stone and all those guys, and I think that
also they only inducted the classic members.
Yeah, well, yeah,
which I thought was kind of bullshit because they inducted everybody in the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, I mean, look. And I'm glad. I like to go off on a tangent here because obviously Dynasty, there's not as much to talk about, and we'll get back to it. I promise.
Yeah, we're about a third of the way through.
Yeah,
the album,
and there's only 9 tracks on it, but that's a great point because look, the guy we were mentioning earlier on that was going to come in to take Peter Criss, Eric Carr, he changes his last name so the syllables roll off the tongue the same way that Peter Criss did, Eric Carr did.
Yeah,
like he loved the band so much. So the fact that Eric Carr isn't in there with them is bullshit. The fact that
Mark St. John
and Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer and Bruce Kulick and all these guys, they're just as big a part of Kiss as anyone else. And I'm glad you mentioned Scooby-Doo because Kiss is actually kind of in the news recently because there was an article that came out that Tommy Thayer said that something along the lines that the stuff they did on Scooby-Doo was better than their new album or something along those lines.
Well, he was like it stood a better chance of getting new listeners than.
That's the thing. A lot of people took that headline as, he's saying their work with Scooby-Doo is better than the new album. He doesn't like the new album. What he was saying is that they have a better chance of getting new listenership and more people heard them on Scooby-Doo than they heard them on the new album.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Like you were saying, we talked about that with the Jason Bourne review that when old bands put out new work, it's you're not necessarily going to be grabbing new fans with a band that's been around for 40 years.
You get a new touring. It gives you a new lease on life in terms of
you open the show with the new single.
Yeah,
and then
like when I saw Blink 182 like 2 months ago, they played 2 songs off their new album.
Yeah,
which was and I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, I guess it keeps them young too. It's whatever the fuck they want to do. So
yeah, I mean,
I never expected a new Kiss album after Psycho Circus. That's basically that's the way it was kind of done. But yeah, whatever they want to do, and I'm all for them making new music. That's cool with me because it means they're going to tour. Although I don't think they're touring close to here this year, which is kind of a bummer.
No, I think they just miss us.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Dynasty. Magic Touch, written by Paul, sung by Paul. It's like his charisma. I think it's just fine.
Yeah, it's filler.
Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, yeah, it really is. It's just it's fine. It sounds like something that could have been on his solo album.
Yeah. Also, another problem I have with a lot of songs in this album is a lot of them don't have to be as long as they are.
No, that's true.
Including Charisma, including Magic Touch.
Yeah, they're just they're. I'm sure there's somebody who this is their favorite song.
They're like, oh
Oh, you fucker!
It's the same guy
Yeah.
that hated us for like complimenting "I Was Made for Loving You" because he's also like a hypocritical asshole.
Yeah, he's like, I've been listening since day one. When you were talking to yourself for the first 2 albums, just to get the magic touch. You're gonna do me like this?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
We're doing you like that.
Yeah, Hard Times, written by Ace, sung by Ace. I think this is one of the best songs on the album. I think this is an example of Ace trying to steer the ship in the hard rock direction.
Yeah, he's trying to. I mean, if anyone would be against the shift towards disco, it would be Ace Frehley.
Yeah. I think it's just a great rock and roll number. Ace and Anton Fig have fantastic chemistry because he'll go on to be in Frehley's Comets, and of course with David Letterman and his the World's Most Dangerous Band or whatever.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, unfortunately. Yeah, I was like seeing because I was like he was in Kiss and nobody knew it for the longest time.
Paul Schaefer was the original keyboardist for the Blues Brothers.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is a great rock and roll song. Anton Fig, like Eric Carr will later on, brings that hard rock drum feel to it, which Peter Criss never did because that wasn't really his kind of style. Great solo. And yeah, again, I think this is a kind of like if you're dozing off because of Charisma and Magic Touch and Dirty Lemon, and then you get Hard Times kicks in, you're like, oh shit, Kiss is back. And at least for this, couple minutes, it's a really great rock and roll track, and it's again kind of foreshadowing of where Ace is going to be too, because it's only going to get harder for him for a while. He has a really kind of great, albeit kind of like patchy solo career, but he really does have a great solo career and some really great. Like he had an album come out a couple years ago. Or album came out a year ago, I guess. That's really solid. But again, this is kind of kind of eerie foreshadowing for Ace because he really has his time is almost up with the band as well. Depending on who you ask, it's his doing or the band's doing. But Hard Times, good song, good rock song. The next song, X-Ray Eyes. This is a song that probably nobody fucking cares about except me. But damn it, do I love this song. Written by Gene, sung by Gene. Keeping it in-house, just him. But it's my favorite Gene track on the album, which isn't that hard.
Is this the Beatles, or is this Kiss's White Album? That they're kind of like doing their own stuff on their own tracks? It's funny you say that because, I really can't. When I finished listening to it today, and it's because we're doing the White Album over on your podcast, or your Beatles podcast, it very much, I feel like it is. I very much feel like it is. Because, they're really kind of doing their own thing. A lot of the tracks, like Paul's playing bass on a track, or Ace is playing all the guitars on a track, which he's still going to do later on as well. But yeah, I think they're kind of they had their solo albums already, but they're still in like solo mode. I kind of feel like I think this song is really super catchy. It reminds me of the song "Naked City," which is going to be we're talking about next episode with Unmasked, which is a catchy song as well, but not, again, X-Ray Eyes and Naked City don't necessarily have substance. They're just catchy and fun. I think Gene has some really strong vocals. There's a really catchy chorus. It's weird because they don't add the call and response stuff until like the second chorus, which is kind of weird. Like the first chorus is not there. You're like, oh, what's so special? And as soon as they kick that call and response in the second chorus, you're like, oh, this song's catchy and cool as shit. I think it's a kind of a nice little hidden gem. And it's one of the things I like doing, talking about all the albums and track by track, is maybe if someone's like, oh, I really don't like Dynasty or only like the singles, maybe you inspire you to check out a song like X-Ray Eyes, or maybe you'll love Magic Touch or whatever, but it's hidden gems that you're not going to find on compilations and you're not going to hear on like a Live 2 or a Live 500, it's songs that they're recorded and that's really it. But X-Ray Eyes is cool, man. I just think that's a really kind of cool song that sounds like it could have been on, definitely could have sounds like it could have been on Dress to Kill. But X-Ray Eyes, I salute you. Next track, last track. Did you have anything to say about X-Ray Eyes? No.
Okay. Next track, last track. Save Your Love, which is not how it goes. Written by Ace, sung by Ace. I just wrote in all capitals on my notes, hell yes, Ace. Because again, he's keeping the rock and roll in Kiss. And he is playing every fucking thing on this track guitar-wise. Ties it, like I said earlier, with most leads on an album on this album with Paul. Paul does 3. I guess Paul's are all original. Ace just makes his cover version better than the original. And I don't know. Most people remember this album for the Kisco stuff, and that's fine. But I really think for me, Ace has become, this is kind of his when he's fully become like Shock Me, of course, in his solo stuff, but this is where like he's sticking to his guns and he becomes like a real all around solid songwriter, because you see it on this album. Like he's doing it by himself. He's playing the guitars by himself, bass if we're talking about 2000 Man. Anton's drums again kick in. They're super fantastic. That chemistry is there, and he's going to remember that for when he goes on to do his own solo stuff. But yeah, I mean that kind of brings it to the end. The album kind of feels like a quick little jolt there with some good stuff here and some not so good stuff there.
Yeah, it doesn't even run for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's short.
But I think this album really is going to set up a trend that's going to kick in the high gear on the next album with lots of outside help. No Peter. Like I said, although he's credited on the next album as a drummer, even though he doesn't play drums at all. So we're really getting it. We've already kind of entered dark times with Kiss.
This is really, like, if this wasn't clear, it's like the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
you could say that really with the solo albums, but really as an ensemble.
Yeah, the solo albums, you could see the clouds in the distance. We've just now entered the fucking, the dark clouds on the sea here, because it's
despite Mufasa's warnings.
Yeah, it's about to get rocky, guys. But we'll be here to help calm the storm. And there's always, no matter,
I don't know about calm the storm, but steer the ship.
Yeah. There's always some great Kiss tracks on every album, even the duds, and we're gonna find them if it kills us. Sam, thank you for being on again and talking Dynasty.
Yeah, no problem. This is the last makeup album I guess I'll talk about.
Yeah. You'll be back for some later stuff for sure.
Yeah.
And as always,
The Wasteland.
Yeah. As always, he's nice enough to have me on his Beatles podcast, so check that out if you guys haven't already. We're going to be talking about the White Album Part 2 coming up.
That's right, yeah.
So, like you said, it's perfect timing talking about Dynasty, even though it's a much shorter album, but it has similar consequences, I think, in the background.
It does. A lot of tension and a lot of the band kind of, some they're taking in outside influences, but they're also not working as an ensemble.
Yeah, so that's right. So, guys, check that out. If you haven't checked out the previous episodes of Kiss My Podcast, check them out, catch them up, listen to some Kiss.
Check out the good albums.
Yeah, check out the good albums. But, guys, that's all for this time. Until next time on Kiss My Podcast, remember to rock and roll all night and party every day.
And clutch your breasts.
That's right. Thank you, sir. Good night.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.